Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Accept, Humanoid, out April 26 on Napalm Records. The album has 11 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 17th full-length studio record. They are a German heavy metal band. When it comes to the design of this record, there's not much new, or there's not much to dissect here. This album is a pure representation of the band, of their history, and of their discography. They've taken similar approaches in previous records, so this is not an album that from a design standpoint is going to surprise the fans. It's an album that's really packed top heavy, and that means that the first half of the album is very balanced, very compact, very fluid, very dynamic, offering a more straightforward approach as far as the song compositions and even in terms of the guitar impact within those same songs and compositions. The second half of the album, you're going to see something a little bit different. There's going to be a little bit more variety. A track like Ravages of Time, a ballad, really helps break that balance that the album has up until that point. And then a song like Straight Up Jack that feels like an AC/DC cover, coming also in that second half of the album, allows you to create some ebbs and flows that are more predominant, that have a little bit more of an impact in the fluidity of the record, something that you definitely don't see in that first half. Now, having these changes from one half to the other does not impact the album overall. The record still feels cohesive enough from start to finish, because even with these changes, even with these songs that offer different experiences, the DNA of the band is still there, so they didn't go that far off the beaten path. They just changed the styles and they changed the influences in order to make that second half a little bit more bumpy, which is interesting and makes the album overall feel a lot more interesting as well. Now, as far as the sound is concerned, this is Accept through and through. I mean, 17 records, they're not about to release a prog album. That's not who they are, and this album, sound-wise, is very close to home and very close with what they've been doing across the previous 16 records. It's an album that focuses on two main elements, the guitars and the vocals. It's always been that way, and this record is no different. The guitar sound on this album has a great impact. It feels and it sounds very rich. It's a very rich sounding album from that standpoint. It's very dynamic, it's very fluid, it has a lot of texture, but it never loses track of that intensity. And in terms of the intensity, what I mean by that is that it's a little bit more focused, a little bit more straightforward, a little bit more driven. It's not necessarily overly heavy, but it does pack quite a punch, and it does have some thickness in the backdrop. Now, most of that thickness is not necessarily coming from the guitars, because I honestly found the guitars on this album to be alive. Most of that thickness is really coming from the combination of drums and bass. Bass and drums on this record work really well as a tandem. They pack in the back end of the sound, giving it some substance, allowing the guitars to work with it, within it, and outside of it, which makes, like I said, the guitar sound a lot richer, but it also allows the overall experience to still feel compact, to still feel like it has boundaries, and to still feel like a heavy, thick album all around. So I like the way this album is put together from a production standpoint, because it enhances all of its individualities. It enhances the warmth and the richness of the guitar sound, and it enhances also how well the drums and bass on this record are working together as one in order to bridge the gap and allow the guitar still room to breathe within, like I said, but also outside of it. Now, once it gets into the vocals, this is a great sounding album from that standpoint. The vocal performance is alive and well. It's a vocal performance that on one hand feels very compact, very balanced. It doesn't change that much. What you see in the first song, it's going to be pretty much what you're going to see throughout. But having said that, there are a few nuances depending on the influences of the tracks. I mentioned two, Ravages of Time and Straight Up Jack, are two songs that vocally are not necessarily equal to the rest. Understanding the individual dynamics of those songs, understanding what those songs are trying to offer the album is important, and then match the vocal performance or change a few things in the delivery and the way you choose certain words for the lyrics really helps those songs come alive and feel closer to the origins of what inspired them, and not necessarily try to mold them into what the overall big picture of this record is all about. And the vocals really do this well from start to finish. But when you look at this album and when you look at Accept's discography, this is a record that just fits in like a glove. It's not their greatest album to date, it is also not their worst album to date. They're super consistent in terms of what they deliver. So if you're a fan of Accept, you're going to be a fan of this record. It's not going to disappoint you by no means. It's a record that is consistent with the history of the band, is consistent what they have done as of late, and is consistent with their discography. It's a solid heavy metal album, by a band that has an incredible career and continues to put out records that are consistent with that same career. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Diving Into Sin. This is the opening track on the record, and it has a great guitar sound. When I mentioned earlier that the guitars are very rich, this opening song really demonstrates how rich the guitar sound is, because they have this sense of being alive, being very dynamic, being very fluid, moving through the drums, outside the drums, around the drums, really complementing the overall sound experience of the track, giving life to the song, if you will. And then the vocals feel a little bit more controlled in the verses and a little bit more explosive in the chorus. This also allows the chorus to gain more volume sound-wise, and that makes that specific chorus really stand out and be the peak of the mountain that you've been climbing throughout those verses. So it's a song that has this prototypical format, but it works really well in the context of the record. A track that has a great solo section, a solo section that from a guitar standpoint really emphasizes the energy, the dynamicness of the sound, and it represents well what you heard from the guitars throughout the entire track. This song also closes with the exact same sound as it opens, so it kind of goes full circle. It's a song that's kind of in a bubble, and it's nice that you have this as the opening track, because the rest of the songs on this record, the other 10 songs, don't have any of these characteristics of starting and closing and feeling like a little bit isolated. This track almost feels like an island when you compare it to the rest of the album. The rest of the album is a little bit more compact until you get to that second half, but as an opening track, works really well. Next you have Nobody Gets Out Alive. This is a more rock song, a lot less metal, a lot more rock. You still have some bite on the guitars, and I think that's important, but the main sound, the main guitar riff, is really a rock riff that stands out, almost like an arena rock style riff that works really well. And the vocals on this track match that same arena rock, match that same rock vibe, and this allows the track to have a really cool pre-chorus that leads you up into the chorus. The chorus is super hooky, and having some backing vocals in that chorus emphasizes the overall hookiness of the track. It's an engaging song, it has an engaging chorus, and that becomes the beacon of the entire track. A track, like I said, it doesn't feel as metal, it feels a lot more rock, but it's important to have these songs mixed in for you to create ebbs and flows, and this track really stood out from the characteristics that it offered. Last but definitely not least, I mentioned this song already, Straight Up Jack. If I didn't know better, I would say that this is an AC/DC cover. That is how close it sounds to AC/DC. And not just it sounds, actually, it's very close to an AC/DC song, both musically and vocally. And I think that's really important. If you're gonna pay homage to AC/DC and you're gonna create a song about drinking, a song that feels very AC/DC, I don't think you can just create the sound. I don't think you can just create the riffs and the drum style. I think you have to go full on and also bring in a vocal performance that kind of resembles what you would get if this song was being performed by AC/DC themselves. So it's a track that has all of those rock AC/DC characteristics in sound, in vocals. It really stands out. I love the theme of it, I love how it works, and most importantly, I love how it breaks that second half of the album, making that last ending experience of the record feel a lot more alive, a lot more dynamic than how the album started, which was a lot more compact. This is it, Accept with Humanoid, out April 26 on Napalm Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.